Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This video is going to be my top 10 list of Golden Age comics by price, by what they've actually sold for. There's other lists out there that actually will be very different from this list, but this is based on the sales history. So you might see other lists which will have very different comics, but this is based solely on what did these comics sell for and which comic had the highest price. So some will be kind of a little bit unfair because some will be low grades that sold for a lot, but it could have been worth more if it was a higher grade that had sold. So some of them are just so rare that they, they never came out with a high. There's just no higher grade that's been sold recently or even like hit the market. So with that being said, let's get on with the show, and I'll show you my top 10 list that I've researched and found based on sales history. There's going to be a few surprises as well. So if you look at this very first one, it's PEP Comics 22. And PEP Comics 22 is the first appearance of Archie, and it is the highest sale that has ever happened for PEP Comics 22 is $252,100. And it was for a CGC 8.0. And that's why it made number 10 on the list. So it's the 10th most expensive comic. And if you look at the census, let me just go back. There's only 29 of them on the census altogether. So, and there's a few that are higher grade than 8.0. So you can imagine that they would be even more expensive. So just to give you an understanding of what we're talking about here. Next one is number 9 on the list is Whiz Comics number 1. Whiz Comics number 1 is the first appearance of Captain Marvel or Shazam, whichever way you want to refer to him. And it was from 1940. And it is one of those comics that is sort of iconic. And if you think about it, it sold for, in a 9.0, for $281,001. And that was, that's a much higher grade than some of the others that are going to be on this list. So, and it made number 9 spot. The number 8 spot is Wonder Woman number 1. Wonder Woman number 1 had a record sale of $291,100 for a CGC 9.0. And it is the first Wonder Woman by herself comic. It's her first solo series. She actually had Sensation Comics, which was also a Wonder Woman comic, but this is the first with her as the title. As instead of Sensation Comics, it was Wonder Woman comics. So Wonder Woman comics from 1942 had a record sale. So actually, I have a copy of Wonder Woman number 1. I'll switch screens back. So here's my copy of Wonder Woman number 1, and it's a really high grade. It's not the one that sold for 200,000, but mine's a restored copy. So, yeah, it's kind of my prized possession here. Okay, so the next one on the list. I'm going to go back to my list here. The next one on the list is Superman number 1. Now, Superman number 1, on many lists is much higher because if there's a higher grade than what I'm about to tell you, then it's it's going to be in the millions. But what sold the highest sale in history for Superman number 1 was for CGC 5.0, and it sold for $360,000. So this is Superman's first solo comic from 1939, and this, if there's a higher grade out there, it is probably one of the top 3 comics. But because based on sales history, the highest sale puts it in the number 7 spot. Okay, so the next one on the list is Batman #1. Batman #1 is the first appearance of the Joker and Catwoman, and the record sale was for 498,000, almost $500,000, and it was a CGC 8.0. So very expensive book, fairly high grade, and it's just an iconic book. It's the first Batman series. It's, you know, it is what it is. It's a great book from April 1940, and that's number 6 on the list. Now the number 5 on the list is Captain America Comics #1. Now Captain America Comics #1 is the first appearance of Captain America, and it's a great Hitler being punched in the face comic, and it sold for a very high grade. This was a 9.4 that sold for just under $1 million. It was $915,000. And, you know, so you compare that to some of the others on the list. This is a much higher grade, but it makes it to the number 5 spot because of that high grade. And it's just a, you know, cool comic. Next one on the list, number 4, is All-Star Comics #8, which is the first appearance of Wonder Woman. And this one had a record sale for, I'm not sure, I think it was a 9 something. I'm not sure what the grade was, but it had a record sale of 936,000, just under $1 million. And it is All-Star Comics #8, and it was the first appearance of Wonder Woman in 1942. I'm going to show you. I have my copy of All-Star Comics #8. Now this is a low grade. It's a 2.5, non-restored, but it is a low grade. Grade does matter. So if this was a much higher grade, yes, it would be a very valuable comic, but it's a fairly low grade. Even in this low grade, it's probably worth about 40,000. So yeah, not too bad. Another prize collection. Okay, so I have 2 out of these top 10, but let's continue with the list. So in the number 3 spot, we go to Marvel Comics #1. Marvel Comics #1 is the first appearance of the Human Torch and the Angel, and it sold for $1.26 million, so over $1 million for a 9.4, so a very high grade. This is from 1939, so you can imagine that a high grade one would be very rare. So yes, it's the number 3 highest selling comic of all time. The number 2 on the list, and you probably would have guessed this one, is Detective Comics #27, the first appearance of Batman. And this one just had a sale recently. I mean, really recent, like within the last 2 months, for $1.5 million in a CGC 7.0. Now there's higher grades out there, and if they ever come up again for auction, they're probably going to go 3-4 million. So this book has really, really jumped up in price recently. So 1.5 million, that's pretty crazy. And it's Detective Comics #27 from 1939, first appearance of Batman. Pretty awesome book. And you'll guess what the #1 book is, but I'll say it anyways. It's Action Comics #1, and this is the first appearance of Superman, and it was from June 1938, and it had a record sale of a CGC 9.0 of $3.2 million. Now this makes it the highest sale of any comic in history. So this is the #1 comic of the Golden Age, and probably of all time. So I hope you enjoyed this list. I'm actually going to do a series throughout this week of comics that are the top from each of the different generations. So top Golden Age, top Silver Age, top Bronze Age, and the top modern comics. And if you enjoy watching these videos, I recommend you check out my other videos. One more comic that I'd like to mention, and this is a comic that's usually on the list for top 10, is, and I'll go back to it just one sec, All American Comics number 16. This barely didn't make the list. So it and PEP Comics 22 were ones that were kind of competing. This is the first appearance of the Green Lantern. There was a higher grade out there. I imagine this one will be worth, normally would have been in the top 10. It's just based on what I was using as a character, a way of determining what's the top 10 was based just solely on what had the highest sales number. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out my other videos, and thanks for watching. Bye.